Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Elizabeth Lewis. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Wonderful. You know, I'm really excited because, well, we're alive, so I'm excited about that. But also, I really want to know, what is your story?
Yeah. Oh man, I always am amazed by how things in life come full circle, right? So my company, Brand Style and Bloom by Elizabeth Danielle, through personal styling and personal branding, I help people to reveal the best versions of themselves to reach their goals in life. So there's the branding element and then the fashion element. So when I was little, I remember being obsessed with fashion. I was always trying on my mom's dresses, pretending I was going to cocktail parties. I would wear her high heels. Of course, they didn't fit me at all. I would make shoes out of construction paper and try to walk outside of them, and then quickly figured out that that was painful. But that element of fashion was always with me. And I was like, okay, so I love fashion. I'm going to be a fashion designer. So I took a fashion design class in college. I was terrible at it. There was just something about making the patterns and the sewing, and it just wasn't working out for me very well, right? I more enjoyed putting the clothing together and selecting it than actually making the clothing. But I didn't really think that that was something I could really pursue at the time. I didn't really understand personal styling. I didn't know that that was like a thing you could do. So I decided to pursue some other creative interests of mine. So my first job out of college was working in book publishing at Penguin Random House. So I've always had a love of the written word and authors. And so there I worked in the Speakers Bureau division of the company, where that was pretty new at the time. I sound very old when I say this, but I worked there when like ebooks were exploding. And everyone was really afraid that the physical book would go away. So publishers were looking for additional streams of revenue. So we would book authors, different speaking engagements, and then get a cut of the commission. So for me, I was the assistant for the bureau, but I got to build like the brand identity for it. I got to, think about what the logo would look like. What does the look of the website look like? Copy, all of those things of like, what is this Speakers Bureau identity going to be, right? Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed doing that, and then I spent some time in the nonprofit world before going to NYU Stern to get my MBA. I knew I wanted to continue in the marketing and kind of branding space, but I kind of understood that more from like a written word, relationship building, creative aspect, and not really the more quantitative aspect. So that's what took me there. So then when I graduated, I worked at Colgate-Palmolive for 5 years. And so there I worked as a senior brand manager on different brands such as Irish Spring, Palmolive, Optic White. And then really got to understand how to be the caretaker of these brands that have been around for years and years and years, and also how to grow them and kind of extend those brands. So in innovation, I worked on putting the kind of story together for some different products that we were launching that we thought would be pretty breakthrough. So I really enjoyed putting the unique story of something together. But then a couple of years ago, I've always had this dream of, pursuing fashion, pursuing branding, but on my own terms. I started putting the bones of my business together. So I got the personal styling certification. I got my website built. I made some business cards. I had some test clients just to see kind of how the idea would work out in real life. I'm like, oh, this thing, might actually have some legs, right? So I did all that preparation and then kind of faced a fork in the road. So I said, okay, I can actually launch this thing and just kind of, leave my salary, which was comfortable. It was a nice salary, but just kind of launch it and do it. And I said, at this point in my life, I don't have anyone to support other than myself. So this is actually a prime time to do it. Or I can go work at another corporation that's more in the fashion space and just kind of continue on a more evolutionary road and then launch my business, 5 or 10 years from now. And I said, okay, Elizabeth, like, what's the choice? What's it going to be? And I chose to take the chance.
Yeah.
So I officially launched my business 3 months ago. So it's all kind of hot off the press, but I'm having the time of my life.
That's amazing. So let's hop back in the time machine.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple times the word identity.
Yes.
Obviously a very integral part of branding and styling and fashion. So it seems like that is one of those recurring underlying themes. Why is that so important to you?
Well, for identity, when I think of a personal brand, it's all about your unique story. And that's so important because it's nobody else's story. It's really your unique story that you tell in it's credible because it's you, and consistent way to reach your goals in life. So when you know that identity and when you've taken the time to kind of actually work on it and kind of know what you stand for, that is so important, because if you don't do that work, I think Jeff Bezos said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Like, your brand takes on a life of itself, and it might not necessarily be what you want it to be.
Right.
So, of course, your brand is authentic to you and reflects who you are, but you have to kind of know what that is and do the work to put it together.
So what does that work look like? And the reason why I'm so curious about this, one, I'm just very curious.
Yeah.
But also I feel like entrepreneurs a lot of time really struggle with their identity.
Yeah.
Because either coming from working with another company or just kind of randomly starting something new, we don't always sit down and take a minute to be like, okay, well, who am I?
Right.
What am I really good at? What's my superpower? And how am I going to let that let that be ever pervasive throughout the brand?
Yeah.
Right. So, what was your journey like, and what did it actually look like specifically of discovering that identity?
Yeah. So the way that I do it, and this is the way that I encourage everyone to do it because it's approachable and kind of easy in a way, but has big results, is sitting down and doing a vision board. So in your vision board, the big question that you ask yourself is, what does my dream life look like, right? And that's a question that I asked myself. So I got myself a big pile of magazines, and I already kind of knew what I wanted to do, to be honest, but, I got myself a pile of magazines. I do this with my clients, like National Geographic. I choose, fashion magazines. I choose business magazines. One time I chose a magazine on bourbon, for one of my clients. But the goal is that people are multifaceted, so you need to have all of these different reflections of things so people can kind of dive in and choose what appeals to them. So I sat down and I did my vision board, and I chose phrases that appealed to me. I chose colors that appealed to me. Of course, pictures of people doing certain things that were appealing to me. And then I encourage people to talk it out with someone, because the real power of doing this is, yes, you have everything on paper and you have the visuals, but it's really when you tell the story of what's behind those images of where the real kind of brand reveals itself. Mm-hmm. So for me, my 3 words were fearless, sophisticated, and whimsical. And so fearless in that I wasn't afraid to take the leap to do this. I mean, I was afraid, right? I mean, there are a lot of risks to doing something like this, but I didn't let the fear overtake me. Sophisticated in that the meaning behind sophisticated is really having an appreciation of fashion, an appreciation of culture. I absolutely have an appreciation for fashion because I see it as a transformational element and a way for people to express themselves. And then whimsy is because I always have a sense of play, and I kind of incorporate that into everything that I do. It's just something that's a little bit off kilter. So today I'm wearing like oranges, I'm wearing like some red boots, I'm wearing a scarf with like purples and things. So I express a lot of that through color and through my accessories, but that's always something that plays in. For one of my clients, when I did this workshopping with him, his 3 words were refined, elevated, and then revolutionary impact. We kind of cheated on the 3rd one. It was like more like a phrase. But the interesting for him is that we arrived at the word elevated because he had chosen a picture of a private jet. And when you see a picture of a private jet, you're thinking, okay, this is someone who wants to make a lot of money in their future. That's really important to them. Having these kind of playthings that people with a lot of means can have. But when he told me why he chose the image, he actually pointed to a phrase that was below the private jet. And the phrase said, an elevated experience. And so I'm like, oh, that's so different from what I was thinking when I just saw this image. So for him, he just doesn't want to be seen as someone who's basic. He's not a basic person, right? But he wanted that to be portrayed through what he did every day and kind of his everyday style. And so that's how we arrived at that word for him. So the power of this is that you're sitting down, you're taking that time to look at what appeals to you today, but it also connects to where you want to be tomorrow. So that's where the identity piece comes in.
So I believe you mentioned before you started your vision board, you already kind of knew what you wanted to do.
Yes.
When did that really click for you, and what was that inspiration that led to that click?
Yeah. Well, I knew I had the inspiration for this business, but I'd never really sat down and realized that I was fearless. That's something that portrayed itself through my vision board. So it was a quality that I had, and it's something that I wanted to be in the future. But that was like a key thing where I was like, this is who I am. This is something that I want to express as my identity purposefully, right? So I think, of course, you can't, I'm not a proponent of just inventing a brand.
Right.
It has to be something that's authentic to you. You already have to have those elements in there, but you kind of laser focus on what those words are so that you express them.
So it's not as much just picking, 3 random words or words and phrases, if you want to call it.
Exactly.
But like identifying within yourself, okay, these are like the 7 that I could pick from. Which ones do I really want to double down on and emphasize and go forward with?
Yes, that also align with your dreams. So there has to be that alignment of who you are and that authenticity, but also connecting to where you want to go. And that's how the vision board brings everything together.
That's cool. I'm curious about the step before the vision board.
Sure.
Because again, I feel like a lot of people operate in this zone of they're just doing things.
Yeah.
They don't really know what they're good at.
Yeah.
They're like, I like fishing, or just
how does
something.
That figure in?
Right.
Right.
And it's like they may be able to identify some of the things that they like to do, but they may not be able to identify what they're really good at or what their strengths are.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think we all know the quote of the, judging the fish by its ability to climb a tree. It's
right.
just, it'll think it's stupid. So the step before the vision board, what's your philosophy there on really getting crystal clear on like, who am I as a person? What am I good at? What are my strengths?
Yeah. Well, I think about what you've been successful at in life and what you enjoy. So when I thought about my past and as I was kind of connecting all the dots of my career, one of the things for me was that I can easily build relationships with people. Like that is something that I am good at. I know that I'm good at that. But what I was lacking when I wanted to take that next step in my career was kind of like that, okay, the numbers, like the analysis, the quantitative side. So that's why I went to grad school to kind of get that piece fleshed out. But relationship building was always something that I'd had that quality to do. So I think it takes some reflection. It takes some really sitting down and thinking about, okay, what has my life been like thus far? What are the things that I've enjoyed? Maybe even asking other people, right? Because again, your brand is so much about how you're perceived, not just how you think about yourself, but how you're perceived as well. So think about that self-inventory, think about that perception, share your thoughts with people. And then if there's like a gap within that, think about, okay, I think I'm really good at this, but maybe I'm not that good at it, but what can I do to become better at it, right? So it really takes that reflection as well as sharing.
That's a very thoughtful answer. So when you were thinking about, okay, I know I have this skill of relationship building.
Yeah.
How did you develop that? Maybe you didn't develop it, maybe it was always just there. but like, what's your process or your philosophy rather on actually building meaningful relationships where you're connecting with other individuals?
I think it's just really being interested in people. You have to like people to be able to build relationships. It's really hard to do that just, hanging out by yourself. So I've always been someone who's interested in people. And it's funny because what I do now is so connected to people. And I really need to be able to build that relationship with them because so much of this is about trust. It's so much more than clothes. Like, they're trusting me with keeping their hopes and dreams safe. They're trusting me to go into their closet, which when you think about clothes that you've chosen, a lot of those are associated with memories, They trust me to recommend what we do with those clothes. Do we keep them? Do we get rid of them? So it's a lot of being open-hearted and that vulnerability, but in forming that relationship with them, I help them to feel safe and to trust me through the journey. So I think it's really being interested in who they are and what they want to accomplish, and just knowing that if you have that trust as a foundation, you can help them get there.
Well, I definitely think you have to like people in order to be able to do that.
Liking people is important.
But I think it's so important to really recognize the importance of relationship building also, and that's really why I wanted to focus on that a little bit, because at the end of the day, we're all in the same business. We're all in the people business.
Right.
And if you don't know how to work with people, you're going to have a really hard time getting things done.
Right.
And so I'm curious, when you're learning about people, and you have to build trust, because like you said, people are trusting you with their reputation.
Exactly.
They're trusting you with their image, how the world sees them.
Right.
How do you go about learning their story? How do you go about understanding who they are and really digging down into that? And I know you've kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I want to just ask that directly.
Yeah.
Because, like, to me, I love asking questions and like getting to hear the story, and when some things, so I just get more curious about specific things. But like, how do you go about doing that? I'm curious.
Well, the process that I go through actually has several different touch points. So all of those help us to build that trust and that connection. So before we even get started, when I'm considering working with someone and they're considering working with me, we just have an initial call, and I call it a discovery call. I'm like, why are we on the phone? What is it that's attracted you to this type of thing? Like, why are you interested in personal branding? Why are you interested in personal styling? And then they'll give me reasons like, I'm just really bored with my wardrobe. Like, when I look in my closet, it's very dull. So usually it actually comes from the styling place, because the connection with the brand and the styling isn't always something that people immediately see, even though it's crucial. So usually it comes from something like those more surface reasons, which I don't know that people are always that afraid to reveal, right? So we kind of start with that top surface.
That's an easy win.
It's an easy win, exactly. But then as we go through the call, I'm like, well, okay, so you're bored with your wardrobe, but what does that mean for you? Like, if you had a wardrobe you can look in every day and be inspired, how would that help you in life, right? So then I take them from that kind of more surface thing to thinking about, what could my future look like if I had this little bit more vibrancy in there, if I could save time, right? If you don't know how to put your clothes together, you're probably spending a lot of time figuring that out every day, right? So again, that's something more surface, but okay, I could have more time, with my family. I could have more time to pursue this other thing that I want to do. So that's continuing to kind of peel the onion and dig deeper into that deeper space. So then once they've told me those things, I'm like, well, here's how I can help you, and here's how we can work to get to that version of yourself that's kind of like a step change that'll help to make these things easier in your life. So that's already one kind of touch point of trust. And then the branding part, like, people kind of think it's arts and crafts at first. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going back to grade school. We're cutting up images in magazines. So that's why that part is so powerful, is because it's kind of innocent and takes you to that artsy craftsy space, but then we get deep. Because people are like, oh, I've never really thought about this before. Like, I've never thought about why I like these specific colors or these specific words. I don't know, why this necessarily appeals to me. But as they're telling me those stories, they don't even realize that they're getting deep. But they want to help me to get to that place where I can understand them better. So they're kind of willing to go there, right? If you've already started a process like this, it takes a little bit of vulnerability from the outset. So it's just kind of continuing through that process. Then once I get in their closet, once we have those 3 words, to be honest, they're like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, and then they're excited by that because they've never actually sat down and taken that time to think about, like, what are my 3 words? That's kind of a new concept for a lot of people, right? So then they're excited. So that excitement trumps, any sort of major fear that they might have of doing this process because they're seeing that it's working. So then that trust just kind of builds throughout. And then I make sure that it continues after we're done by, like, checking in with them. How has this made you feel? A lot of times the answer is more confidence. I feel more confident every day when I can wear something that I believe in that reflects my brand. Like, when I go into a room, like, I'm there. I'm not hiding anymore. Like, I'm not afraid that I'm, wearing the wrong thing or in an environment where, I'm not necessarily seizing that opportunity. So it's just more confidence to kind of show up, but as themselves on a daily basis.
That's awesome. I'm a voracious reader, and, I've been reading a lot of Oprah lately.
Oh, I love Oprah.
She's awesome.
Great, right?
She's the best.
Yeah.
And, one of the messages that I really got from her was, and maybe I didn't get the right message here, but what I interpreted it as was, we all have, like, our moment of destiny.
Yeah.
We all have the thing that we're really put here for, and our job is to figure that out.
Right.
And so it seems like, the whole point of the show is to help people turn their dreams into reality. I think we're on a very similar mission with 2 different vehicles. You're coming at it from the personal branding, the identity, the style, and you're really helping people get more in touch with who they are. And then it's like starting from that closet, going into the depths of who they are at their core, and then coming back up to make sure all of those other things really reflect who they really are.
Right, exactly. That's their piece of destiny. And taking some time to figure that out and then manifesting itself.
Right.
I think Oprah's onto something.
Well, she must be. She must be. Well, I really want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming on the show and talking about all this stuff. I do have one more question for you.
Yes.
Then we'll wrap it on up. I really want to know, what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
I think the question would be, where do I find inspiration? Because pursuing your dreams is amazing, but it's really hard work. And your mindset as an entrepreneur is everything, right? You really have to make sure to keep yourself in a positive space. So if you were to ask me that question, I would tell you that I find my inspiration in nature. I live in New York City, and sometimes you can feel very hemmed in. The air isn't necessarily always that fresh, like lots of buildings just all around you, right? So when I go into wide open spaces, that can be as minimal as Central Park, which I live a few blocks away from, or even like a train ride away to the Hudson Valley and just go on a hiking trail. Like, I just feel like I have the space to think and to renew myself and my energy.
And so in nature, it's about what exactly? Like, what about being there, being in that space, that environment allows you to kind of get back to what you're really looking for and yourself?
Yeah, I think it's the fresh air. I mean, fresh air does a lot for you. And I think it's also just being in wide open spaces. I think sometimes when I get anxious, it's because I've put myself into this box. Okay, Elizabeth, you have option A, you have option B, you have option C, like this is it, right? And I've kind of not looked outside to like, what's option Z, right? That could still reach the goal, but is not necessarily something I've thought about. So when I can open up my own mind, which is going into open nature, that's when I open myself up and then those ideas start to come.
Seems like a meditation for you.
Yeah, it is kind of a meditation. Being in nature, it's a meditation for me. Yeah.
That's powerful. And I love nature too. And like, to me, when you're out there and I mean, either you're walking or you're hiking or even if you're just sitting, right? You're just there. It's almost like the rest of the world just kind of melts away. Not in a bad way, of course,
Right, yeah.
a very peaceful way. And it's like you get to almost step back from everything and just have that space. And then you can just be for a second and then let everything, like the day-to-day of, I have to think about this, and I have to do that, I have to get over here, and I have to worry about that. Just let that kind of, again, melt away, and then you're just left with like that core you.
Right.
And then you get to think.
Right.
And what's really interesting about what we've been talking about, a lot of what we've been talking about is like self-awareness, getting more in touch with who we are at our core. Honestly, the person that's the most difficult with a lot of the time is ourself, because for most people it's probably a very like alien concept of, hey, you may not know everything about yourself. Like you may have not taken the time to ask yourself the really hard questions. I mean, just asking yourself one question every day, who am I? You're going to get a different answer every day. You're going to learn more about yourself every day. It's really cool. So I love what you're talking about nature, because I think it gives you the space to do that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just being present. I don't know about you, but sometimes I like to climb up mountains, right? And I'm just trying to not like slip and fall. I'm trying to watch out for the next rock. So it's that presence of mind, which is that meditational space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show today and sharing everything that you have. It's been very special, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank y'all very, very much. Y'all rock. You know you do. And I love y'all, each and every one of you. So thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I will see everybody on the next episode. Take care now. Hiking is the best. So I'm in New Orleans, and so not in New Orleans because there is no hiking in New Orleans. Yeah. The highest hill is called Monkey Hill, and it's in the zoo, and it's 30 feet above sea level, and it was man-made, and it's right by the monkeys, so that's why it's called Monkey Hill.
It's kind of fun.
Oh, it's super fun.
That's great.
Yeah, but that's the most hiking there is.
New Orleans.
Yeah, because everything's just really flat. So
Thanks,
the best
Mom.
hiking I've
See
ever
you.
done is in
Nice
Colorado.
to meet you.
So in Pikes Peak, there was this mountain that is
You hear that?
14,000
Okay, great.
feet high. Oh, it was magic. It was super, super cool. Like 9.5 hours up one way, so worth it, so epic. It was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. 9.5 hours. That is legit.
Well, I went with 3 of their friends, and 2 of them were like they quit halfway, and I'm like, come on, guys, we're halfway out here. What are you doing?
Like you've already done
Wrapping the
halfway.
food.
Yeah, finish it up. I know. So it's 9.5 hours back down, too?
Honestly, I don't know
Okay.
because at the top, the